My parents didn't lose the house because of debt. They didn't lose it in court. They lost it over dinner. Over a bowl of plain white rice. And the most ironic part, the woman they fed that rice to owned everything. Here's how quiet cruelty turned into the most patient revenge I've ever seen. I was 16, always hungry after school, backpack heavy, brain fried, stomach loud enough to start arguments. Dinner in our house looked impressive. Steam rising from soup, soy-glazed chicken, perfectly stir-fried vegetables, fresh fruit, sometimes even cake. It looked like a happy home, until you looked by the window. That's where my grandmother sat. Same chair, same small bowl, plain rice, no sauce, no meat, no side dishes, and here's the thing that still bothers me. No one argued about it. No one fought. No one raised their voice. My mom would laugh and say, "She doesn't need much." My dad would nod. "She prefers simple food." It sounded logical, reasonable. And that's how entitlement hides. It disguises itself as practicality. But something in my chest tightened every time I saw it, because deep down, I knew this wasn't about food. Here's what no one mentioned. At dinner, that house was hers. Looking back, the silence was the loudest thing in the house. It was a carefully constructed wall, and on one side was our feast, and on the other, her bowl. It was the first time I understood that cruelty doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it's just a quiet, daily routine. She bought it with my grandfather 40 years ago. After he passed, my dad moved in temporarily. Temporary stretched into decades. Gradually, control shifted. Utilities transferred. Bank accounts managed. Groceries handled. It was subtle, administrative, clean. They didn't break laws. They bent comfort. They followed the checklist. Shelter, medication, food. Technically, respect, negotiable. And here's where the real violation happened. They stopped seeing her as the owner. They started seeing her as the obligation. And obligations get minimized. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part, they believed they were good children. Online, my parents were inspirational. Family first. Grateful for mom every day. Photos of hospital visits. Photos of celebrations. Photos of carefully plated meals. Grandma smiling in every frame. But here's the irony. Those photos were staged when guests came over. She got chicken. When guests left, back to rice. I once asked my mom quietly, "Why doesn't Grandma eat what we eat?" She looked at me like I'd questioned gravity. She doesn't need that heavy food. That answer sat wrong. But that wasn't the worst part. One year, my parents remodeled the kitchen. Marble countertops, gold trim handles, imported tiles. My dad joked to a friend, "At this point, it's basically our house. Our house." Grandma was sitting 3 feet away. She didn't react. She just kept eating rice. But that same week, something shifted. I looked at her, expecting to see a flicker of pain, of anger, but there was nothing. Just a profound stillness. I see now, it wasn't weakness. It was the power of someone who has already decided the outcome, and is just waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. I walked into her room unexpectedly. She was sorting documents, property papers, insurance files, legal envelopes, stacked neatly, organized, intentional. "What are you doing?" I asked. She smiled gently. Preparing. Preparing for what? She didn't say. But that wasn't the worst part. After that day, she started asking me strange things. If someone is kind but ignored, are they still powerful? Do you believe patience wins? If I gave you responsibility, would you carry it carefully? At 16, I didn't fully understand. Now I do. She wasn't asking hypotheticals. She was evaluating character. And here's the part most people miss. Quiet people observe everything. But that wasn't the worst part. Her health began declining, slowly at first. Fatigue, doctor visits, longer naps. Suddenly, my parents transformed. They became attentive, overly attentive. Neighbors would visit, and my mom would dramatically spoon-feed her soup. My dad would say loudly, "We take such good care of her." But when doors closed, portions shrank again. One night, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "Watch how people treat those who can't fight back." It wasn't bitterness, it was a lesson. And what happened next changed everything. She passed peacefully. No dramatic speeches, no confrontations, just quiet. The lawyer's office felt routine. My parents were calm. They had plans. Sell the house, upgrade, move somewhere modern. The lawyer began reading. First, a substantial donation to an elder care foundation. My mother blinked. Then, half the house transferred to me. My father's smile faltered. Then came their portion. A modest, fixed sum. Precise, legal, final. My dad laughed nervously. "There must be some confusion." The lawyer calmly responded, "There is none." And in that moment, ownership returned to its original path. Karma didn't shout. It documented. Here's where people expect chaos. There wasn't any. No screaming, no dramatic eviction, just compliance. It wasn't a feeling of victory. It was a feeling of alignment, like a dislocated bone snapping back into place. The quiet injustice I had witnessed for years was being answered, not with a bang, but with the rustle of paper. They could stay under conditions, equal grocery contributions, rent payments, shared responsibilities, you know, the basics, the same minimum standards they once applied to her. And here's where irony sharpened. Dinner portions became equal overnight. Suddenly, make sure everyone has enough. Interesting. Empathy arrived with paperwork. They tried guilt. "We raised you," I answered once. She built this silence. For months, tension hung in the air. But something unexpected happened. They changed, not instantly, not dramatically, but slowly. My father now insists everyone eats together. My mother double-checks plates. Sometimes she overserves guests out of what feels like guilt. Growth is awkward. Justice is uncomfortable, but it works. Here's the truth. My grandmother didn't seek revenge. She sought correction. She didn't scream, she didn't accuse, she didn't fight. She adjusted the future. She followed their logic. She doesn't need much, so she gave them not much. That's malicious compliance at its purest. And the most poetic part, she never stopped being kind. Even in her will, she didn't leave them nothing, just enough. Enough to survive. Not enough to control. Now, every dinner, one chair stays empty. Not as punishment, as a reminder. Because the woman they reduced to rice, that empty chair isn't a ghost, it's a teacher. It reminds me that strength isn't about how loudly you can command a room. It's about the quiet integrity you maintain when no one is watching. My grandmother taught me that power isn't taken. It's held, owned the entire table. And here's what stays with me. If someone seems quiet, if someone seems powerless, if someone doesn't need much, be careful. They might be the one holding the pen and karma. Karma doesn't need anger. It just needs time.